You know that feeling, the one where someone reaches out to you with their problems, and something inside you immediately stands at attention. Your shoulders straighten, your mind clears, and suddenly you're fully present, ready to solve a problem that isn't yours. It's almost instinctive, isn't it? The way you put aside whatever you were feeling, whatever you were struggling with, to become the rock, the anchor, the healer for someone else. And in that moment, something peculiar happens. Your own pain fades into the background. Your own wounds stop bleeding, if only temporarily. There's a strange comfort in focusing on someone else's brokenness rather than facing your own. And perhaps, if you're truly honest with yourself, there's also that warm glow of being needed, of being important, of being the one who can fix what others cannot. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself why you do this? Why, even when you're barely holding yourself together, you find the energy to hold others? Why, even when your own life is in disarray, you're the first to offer guidance, solutions, support? Schopenhauer, that brilliant pessimist who saw through human behavior with uncomfortable clarity, would tell you that this is no coincidence. This is no random act of kindness. This is a pattern, a mechanism, a carefully constructed illusion that serves you as much as, perhaps even more than, it serves others. This video is for you, the perpetual helper, the chronic fixer, the one who everyone turns to in a crisis, the one who feels an almost sacred duty to heal others, while your own wounds remain open, untended, hidden even from yourself. It's for you who have built an identity around being strong for others, around having the answers, around never falling apart. It's for you who have become so good at carrying others that you've forgotten how to put yourself down, even when your back is breaking from the weight. Today, we're going to look at what Schopenhauer might call one of humanity's greatest self-deceptions, the savior complex. Not as something noble or selfless, but as a psychological trap that keeps you locked in a cycle of self-neglect while giving you the illusion of purpose. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to break free from this trap, not by abandoning others, but by finally having the courage to face what you've been running from all this time: your own humanity, your own vulnerability, your own need for healing. So let me ask you, are you ready to consider the possibility that your constant helping might be hurting you? That your role as everyone's savior might actually be your own prison? If so, then stay with me, because what follows might change everything you thought you knew about your deepest motivations. Part 1. The origins of the savior complex. Think back to your childhood. There's a moment there, perhaps so distant now that it feels like it happened to someone else, when you first learned that taking care of others could protect you from your own pain. Maybe it was when your parents fought and you became the peacemaker, the good child who never caused problems. Maybe it was when someone you loved was suffering, and you discovered that focusing on their needs gave you an escape from your own confusion, your own fear. Or maybe it was simply when you realized that being helpful, being the fixer, the solver, earned you the love and approval you so desperately craved. Schopenhauer understood that human behavior is rarely as simple as it appears on the surface. Behind our most noble-seeming actions often lie complex, unconscious motivations. He wrote that compassion is the basis of morality. But he also knew that what masquerades as compassion is sometimes something else entirely, a form of self-preservation, a way to assert control in a world that feels chaotic, a means of gaining the validation we cannot give ourselves. The savior complex begins innocently enough. A child learns that their worth is measured by their usefulness to others. That love is conditional upon what they can provide, not who they inherently are. And so a pattern forms. I help, therefore I am valued. I fix, therefore I matter. I save, therefore I am safe. But there's a darker side to this origin story. Because often, those who become perpetual helpers, perpetual healers, do so because they themselves have experienced deep wounds that were never properly acknowledged or addressed. And rather than face the terrifying task of healing themselves, they project their healing instinct outward. It becomes easier to see others' pain than to confront your own. Easier to fix others than to fix yourself. Easier to be needed than to admit that you too have needs. Ask yourself now, when did you first learn that your worth was tied to how much you could give? When did you first discover that being the helper protected you from something even more frightening? Being the one who needs help? These aren't comfortable questions, I know. But without facing them, you remain caught in a pattern that began before you were even conscious of it. Schopenhauer believed that most human suffering comes from our inability to see our true motivations clearly. We tell ourselves stories about why we do what we do, and these stories become the prison walls we cannot see beyond. The savior in you believes they act out of pure compassion, out of strength, out of love. But perhaps what truly drives you is fear. Fear of your own unhealed wounds. Fear of being abandoned if you stop being useful. Fear of who you might be if you weren't always the one who saves. This isn't meant to diminish the genuine care you feel for others. That part is real. But it's tangled up with these deeper, unconscious motives that keep you trapped in a cycle of giving beyond your means, of healing others while remaining wounded yourself. And until you untangle them, you cannot truly be free. In the next part, we'll explore how this savior complex manifests in your daily life, the toll it takes on you, and why, paradoxically, it may actually be preventing you from truly helping those you care about most. If what I'm saying resonates with you, stay with me. Because recognition is the first step toward liberation. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Part 2. The symptoms of self-sacrifice. You pride yourself on being the person everyone can count on. The one who always answers the phone at 2 a.m. The one who drops everything when someone is in crisis. The shoulder to cry on, the ear that listens, the voice of reason and comfort. And there's something intoxicating about it, isn't there? The feeling of being essential, irreplaceable, the quiet pride of thinking, they wouldn't know what to do without me. But Schopenhauer would see through this. He would recognize the will to power disguised as selflessness. Because make no mistake, there is power in being the savior. There is control in being the one who has the answers, who knows how to fix what's broken. And there is a deep, almost addictive satisfaction in being needed. Yet this role exacts a price, one that grows steeper with time. Let's talk about the symptoms, the warning signs that your savior complex has become a destructive force in your life. First, there's the chronic exhaustion. Not just physical tiredness, though that's certainly part of it. I'm talking about a soul-deep fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to cure. You wake up already depleted, already dreading the weight of everyone's problems that you'll carry through the day. You've become so accustomed to this state that you barely recognize it as abnormal anymore. This exhaustion isn't just a side effect of helping too much. It's your body and mind screaming for you to stop, to turn some of that care inward. Then there's the resentment. Oh, you try to hide it, even from yourself. After all, how can you resent people for needing you when being needed is such a core part of your identity? But it's there, bubbling beneath the surface. The flash of irritation when your phone rings with yet another crisis. The internal sigh when someone begins a conversation with, "I really need your advice." The bitter thoughts that sometimes slip through. Why am I always the one who has to be strong? Why doesn't anyone ask how I'm doing? This resentment isn't a character flaw. It's a natural response to a profound imbalance in how you relate to others and yourself. And perhaps most telling of all is the emptiness. The sense that despite all you do for others, despite how central you are to so many lives, there's a void at the center of your own. You've become so skilled at anticipating others' needs that you've lost touch with your own. You know how to comfort, how to support, how to heal. But when it comes to your own emotions, your own wounds, you're strangely helpless. It's as if you've given away so much of yourself that there's little left when you finally turn your attention inward. Schopenhauer understood this paradox. He wrote that we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. And for the Savior, this fraction is even higher. You've sacrificed not just parts of yourself, but the very ability to know what those parts are. Your identity has become so wrapped up in what you do for others that without their needs to fulfill, you feel almost non-existent. There's also a more subtle symptom, the way your relationships tend to follow the same pattern. You're drawn to people who need saving, who are in some kind of crisis or struggle. You may find yourself uncomfortable with relationships where the other person is self-sufficient, where there's no clear role for you as the fixer, the helper. And when relationships do become more balanced, when the other person begins to stand on their own 2 feet, you may feel a strange mixture of pride and panic. What is your place in their life if they no longer need your strength, your guidance, your constant support? This is the trap of the savior complex. It creates dependencies that serve your unconscious needs as much as they serve others, and it locks you into a role that over time becomes a prison, one where your worth is forever tied to what you can give, never to who you simply are. But perhaps the most devastating symptom is the way you've learned to ignore your own pain, the way you've become almost numb to your own suffering while remaining hypersensitive to the suffering of others. You've developed an ability to push aside your own needs so completely that you barely register them anymore. Your wounds remain unhealed, not because they're too deep, but because you've convinced yourself they don't exist, or don't matter, or can wait until everyone else's pain has been tended to first. And that day never comes, does it? There's always someone else in need, always another crisis to manage, always another reason to postpone your own healing journey. But as Schopenhauer would tell you, this postponement isn't noble. It's a form of self-deception that ultimately serves no one, least of all those you're trying to help. Because, and this is the crucial point, you cannot truly heal others while wounded yourself. Not fully. Not in the deep, transformative way you aspire to. Your unaddressed pain colors everything you do, limits your perspective, depletes your resources. Like a doctor trying to perform surgery with an untreated injury, your ability to help is compromised in ways you may not even recognize. In the next part, we'll explore why this is so, why your own unhealed wounds actually prevent you from being the savior you're trying to be. And more importantly, we'll begin to chart a path toward a different way of being, one where your capacity to care for others comes from wholeness rather than woundedness. Part 3. The Wounded Healer's Paradox. There's a story that Carl Jung, who was deeply influenced by Schopenhauer's philosophy, often told about the wounded healer. It speaks of Chiron, the wisest of centaurs in Greek mythology, who suffered from an incurable wound. Despite his own unending pain, he became the greatest healer of his time. This myth captures something profound about human nature, that our wounds can be the source of our deepest wisdom and compassion. But Jung and Schopenhauer would both point out a crucial distinction. It's not the wound itself that gives the healer their power. It's the relationship with the wound. The healer who acknowledges their pain, who has faced it directly and learned from it, gains a wisdom that the one who merely runs from their suffering never will. And this is where your savior complex reveals its fundamental flaw. You're not healing from your wounds, you're hiding from them. You're using your role as everyone else's savior as an elaborate distraction from the work that your own soul is crying out for you to do. And in doing so, you're caught in a paradox. The very thing that makes you feel strong, your ability to help others, is actually keeping you weak, keeping you wounded, keeping you from the genuine strength that comes only from facing your own pain. Let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that your desire to help others isn't genuine. It is. But it's also serving as a shield, protecting you from the vulnerability of looking inward. Every time you focus on someone else's problems instead of your own, every time you offer solutions to others while ignoring the questions screaming inside you, you're reinforcing the walls of your own prison. And here's the deeper truth that Schopenhauer would insist you face. Your unhealed wounds aren't just hurting you. They're limiting how much you can truly help others. Think about it. How can you guide someone through their darkness when you're afraid to look at your own? How can you teach authentic self-love when you treat yourself with such unconscious cruelty? How can you help others set healthy boundaries when your own are so porous that everyone's pain becomes yours to carry? Your wounds color everything you do. They create blind spots in your perception. They trigger responses based on your unprocessed trauma rather than the actual needs of the person before you. They cause you to project your own unresolved issues onto situations where they don't belong. In your attempt to be the perfect savior, you've denied yourself the very vulnerability that would make you an authentic guide. Schopenhauer understood that true compassion, not the kind that serves our ego or our need to control, but genuine compassion, can only come from a place of clear seeing. And you cannot see clearly when you're looking through the lens of your own unacknowledged pain. Think of it this way. Imagine trying to be a lighthouse for others, while refusing to look at the cracks in your own foundation. You may still cast some light, still help some ships find their way to shore, but eventually, those cracks will spread. The foundation will weaken, and both you and those relying on your light will be left in darkness. This is not meant to shame you, quite the opposite. It's meant to liberate you from the impossible standard you've set for yourself, to be everyone's savior while denying that you too are human and in need of salvation. It's meant to show you that the very qualities you admire in yourself, your compassion, your desire to help, your sensitivity to others' pain, can become more powerful, more genuine, more truly helpful when they flow from wholeness rather than woundedness. But how do you begin this shift? How do you start to heal yourself without abandoning those who have come to depend on you? How do you find the balance between caring for others and caring for yourself? These are the questions we'll explore in the next part. Because the path out of the savior complex isn't about stopping your care for others. It's about transforming the nature of that care and including yourself in the circle of your own compassion. Part 4. Breaking the cycle of self-neglect. The most difficult truth you need to face now is this. Your savior complex is not a sign of your strength, but of your fear. Fear of looking inward. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of needing others as much as they need you. Fear of what you might find if you finally turn your healing gaze toward yourself. Schopenhauer would say that until you confront this fear, you remain a slave to it, and to the savior role that protects you from it. But confrontation doesn't mean conquest. You don't need to defeat your fear. You need to understand it, to sit with it, to listen to what it's trying to tell you. Because buried in that fear is a wound that has been waiting, perhaps for decades, for you to finally acknowledge it. Maybe it's the wound of conditional love, the lesson you learned early that you were valued for what you did, not who you were. Maybe it's the wound of parentification, having to be the little adult in a family where the actual adults couldn't fulfill their roles. Maybe it's the wound of trauma and the illusion of control that helping others gives you in a world that once showed you how powerless you could be. Or maybe it's simply the universal human wound of imperfection in a world that demands perfection, and the way becoming the helper allowed you to hide your own flaws and struggles. Whatever your specific wound, the healing begins not with a dramatic gesture, but with a simple acknowledgement, with the courage to say, "I am wounded too," not as a whispered confession of shame, but as a declaration of your humanity. This acknowledgement isn't weakness, it's the foundation of genuine strength. Because once you can admit your own brokenness, you no longer need to be perfect. You no longer need to have all the answers. You no longer need to be the savior who never falters, never tires, never fails. You can be human, flawed, learning, growing. And in that humanity lies a power far greater than any savior complex could provide, the power of authenticity. But acknowledgement alone isn't enough. You must also begin the practice of self-compassion. And for someone who has built their identity around compassion for others, this should be simple, right? Yet paradoxically, those most skilled at caring for others are often the cruelest to themselves. You hold others with such gentleness, such patience, such understanding, and then turn to yourself with harsh judgment, impossible standards, and relentless criticism. Schopenhauer understood this contradiction in human nature. He saw how we could be so insightful about others' motivations, yet so blind to our own. How we could forgive others' failings, yet punish ourselves mercilessly for the same human imperfections. This disconnect is at the heart of the savior complex, the ability to see others as deserving of care, coupled with the inability to see yourself as equally deserving. So your practice now must be to turn that compassionate gaze inward, to speak to yourself with the same kindness you offer so freely to others, to treat your own wounds with the same tender attention you give to everyone else's. This isn't selfishness, it's wholeness. It's the recognition that you cannot compartmentalize compassion, directing it outward while denying it to yourself, without creating a fundamental imbalance in your being. The next step is perhaps the most challenging, learning to receive as well as give. For the savior, there is safety in being the giver. It puts you in control. It places you in the position of strength. Receiving, on the other hand, requires vulnerability. It means admitting need, admitting incompleteness. It means allowing others to see parts of you that you've worked so hard to hide. Your struggles, your uncertainties, your pain. But in this vulnerability lies freedom. The freedom to be supported rather than always supporting. The freedom to share your burdens rather than carrying them alone. The freedom to be part of a community of mutual care rather than its designated savior. This shift doesn't happen overnight. After years, perhaps a lifetime, of building your identity around being the helper, the fixer, the strong one, you won't suddenly transform into someone comfortable with receiving care. It will feel awkward, uncomfortable, perhaps even wrong at first. You'll feel the pull back to your familiar role, the urge to deflect attention from your needs and refocus on others. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. The important thing is to begin recognizing these patterns, to catch yourself when you slip back into the savior role automatically, and to gently, persistently redirect some of that care toward yourself. And as you do this inner work, something remarkable begins to happen. Your capacity to help others doesn't diminish, it transforms. You start to help from a place of genuine choice rather than compulsion, from overflowing rather than depletion. from wisdom rather than woundedness. You begin to set boundaries not because you care less, but because you understand that sustainable care requires them. You become able to discern when your help is truly needed and when it might actually be interfering with someone else's growth. In short, you become not less of a helper, but a healthier one. One who offers support without sacrificing self. One who guides without controlling. One who cares without becoming consumed. In our final section, we'll explore what this transformed helping looks like and how you can continue your journey from wounded savior to authentic healer. Because the world doesn't need you to sacrifice yourself on the altar of others' needs. It needs you whole, balanced, and truly present for yourself as much as for those you care about. Part 5. From Savior to Authentic Helper. Imagine a different way of being in the world, one where your worth isn't tied to how much you can give, how many problems you can solve, how many people rely on you. One where you help others not out of fear or unconscious need, but from a place of genuine choice and authentic compassion. One where you no longer need to be seen as the savior, because you've finally learned to save yourself. This transformation doesn't mean abandoning your compassionate nature. It doesn't mean turning away from those who need you. It means bringing consciousness to what has been unconscious, intention to what has been automatic, balance to what has been extreme. Schopenhauer believed that consciousness is the key to freedom, that by bringing our hidden motivations into the light, we can begin to make choices that truly serve us rather than being driven by unconscious compulsions. For someone caught in the savior complex, this means becoming aware of the moment-by-moment choices you make to focus on others instead of yourself, to give beyond your means, to take responsibility for problems that aren't yours to solve. Once you develop this awareness, you can begin to make different choices. Not all at once, not perfectly, but gradually, consistently moving toward a more balanced way of being. Start by practicing the pause. When someone brings you their problem, when the phone rings late at night, when you feel the familiar pull to drop everything and rush to the rescue, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this truly mine to solve? Am I helping from a place of fullness or depletion? What need in me is being served by saying yes? This pause doesn't mean you won't help. It means you'll help consciously, from choice rather than compulsion. Then, practice speaking a new truth, the truth of your own limits, your own needs, your own humanity. This might sound like, I care about you, but I don't have the capacity to take this on right now. Or, I want to support you, but I need to take care of myself tonight. Or simply, I don't know how to fix this. These statements aren't failures of compassion, they're expressions of honesty and authenticity. And they create space for relationships based on mutual care, rather than one-sided rescue. As you practice these new ways of being, you'll likely encounter resistance, both from within yourself and from others who have grown accustomed to your unlimited availability. The internal voice may say, if you don't help, who will? Or, they need you. How can you be so selfish? These voices aren't the truth. They're echoes of the old pattern, the old wounds speaking. Acknowledge them with compassion, but don't let them pull you back into the savior role. And when others express disappointment or even anger at your new boundaries, remember that their reaction isn't your responsibility. People who have come to depend on your overfunctioning will naturally feel uncomfortable when you begin to function in a healthier way. This discomfort isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that the system is recalibrating, that the relationships are being invited to evolve into something more balanced, more mutual, more healthy for everyone involved. The most beautiful part of this transformation is what happens to your capacity for genuine connection. When you're caught in the savior complex, your relationships have a particular shape, you above, reaching down to those in need below. This creates distance, hierarchy, an unconscious imbalance of power. But as you heal, as you allow yourself to be both strong and vulnerable, both giver and receiver, you create the possibility for relationships characterized by true mutuality, true intimacy. You'll find that when you stop trying to save everyone, you can finally be truly present with them. When you're not focused on fixing, you can listen more deeply. When you're not playing the role of the strong one, you can connect more authentically. Your relationships become less about what you can do for others or what they can do for you, and more about the genuine exchange of presence, care, and understanding that flows both ways. Schopenhauer believed that compassion, true compassion, arises from the recognition that at the deepest level, we are not separate from one another. That your suffering is my suffering, and my joy is your joy. This isn't the codependent merging of the savior complex. It's the profound spiritual insight that beneath our apparent separateness lies a fundamental unity. From this perspective, self-care isn't opposed to caring for others. It's part of the same seamless fabric of compassion. When you truly understand that you and others are not separate, caring for yourself becomes not an alternative to caring for others, but an essential aspect of universal care. This is the wisdom that transforms the wounded savior into the authentic helper. Not someone who never struggles, never doubts, never needs support, but someone who embraces the full spectrum of human experience, who offers help not from above but from alongside, who knows their own wounds intimately and has learned to tend them with the same care they offer to others. So, I ask you now, are you ready to put down the burden of being everyone's savior? Are you ready to embrace your own humanity, your own needs, your own journey of healing? Are you ready to discover how much more you have to give when you stop giving from depletion? If this message resonated with you, write in the comments, "I deserve my own compassion." Let's see how many of us are ready to break free from the savior complex and step into a more balanced, more authentic, more truly compassionate way of being. And remember, the next video in this series will deepen our exploration of these patterns. It's worth watching because the journey doesn't end here, it's just beginning. Thank you for having the courage to look at this pattern honestly. The fact that you've stayed with this difficult topic shows that you're ready for transformation, and that readiness is the first step toward freedom.